All right. This is exciting. This is very exciting. First, I would like to introduce myself and this podcast. My name is Treble NLS. I am the lead teaching artist here at One Hood Media. I'm also an Emmy award-winning multi-hyphenate artist and energy healer. I'm certified to do Reiki. So you are now tuned into Vibe Check. It's a very new podcast about emotional regulation and stuff like that. We're going to be doing a lot of episodes about, different emotions, how to regulate them, what they're like, how they exist in the body. But we'll also be interviewing really dope creatives and seeing how they regulate their emotions and kind of like getting some insight on their emotional experience and their journey through their creative process. And sitting to my left
is Ajani Zanaya. Hello. Do you want me to go into detail about what I do here?
Of course.
So I'm the media literacy fellow here at One Hood. I essentially assist the organization in, my bad. I assist the organization in getting more people to understand what's going on in our media and communications and in the arts. So making sure that people understand how to critically think. You'd be surprised. Many people do not know how to do that. But also how to engage with what you see around you. So I feel like this is relevant to what we're doing right here in Vibe Check because when you have media that is making commentary about how to handle your emotions and process what's going on around you, that impacts how you can show up in the world, and feeling like you're being represented and having that storytelling aspect within your media is relevant. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
So without further ado, we have a special guest.
Hi, I'm Sara Porkalob, multi-hyphenate storyteller and cultural worker. My government address is in Seattle, but I'm lucky for the last 5 years of my life to have been working all over the country. This is my first time in Pittsburgh, and I'm so excited to be here with you both.
It's your first
Yes,
time.
welcome.
First time.
How you liking it so far?
I love it. I love it. I will say that the Primanti's Brothers sandwich was really hyped up to me. I had it the other day, not to hate, but I'm like, okay, not for me.
I feel it. Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Other than that,
yeah.
I really like Pittsburgh.
That's what's up. So, Sarah.
Yeah.
Listen, we both saw Dragon Lady live in the flesh. Amazing. If you haven't seen Dragon Lady, you want to see Dragon Lady because it is absolutely beautiful. And like, I'm not a crier. Like, when it comes to watching stuff, I be crying, but like, I don't cry during like movies and shows like that. It really has to hit my heart. You know what I'm saying? And my friend Alex, who's the assistant director, she was like, yo, you're going to cry. I was like, no, I'm not. Watch. And then Act 2 comes along, and I'm like, oh.
Got you. Got your ass.
And, like, it was such a rich cry, because you were telling us the story of your lineage. And what really got me was when I realized that your grandma wasn't here. And I'm like, oh, man, like, this is such a beautiful way to honor her memory. You know what I'm saying? And my first question is, like, for you, right? What has the emotional journey been working on a show like Dragon Lady?
It is the gift that keeps on giving. When I first started writing this in 2012, I didn't know that what I was making at that time was going to become a 2-act original cabaret musical that would eventually feature my grandmother as an actor even in it when she was alive, that would then turn into a trilogy of musical plays about my family. Like when I first started writing it, I was a depressed 21-year-old in a primarily white liberal arts private college, terrified about the reality of like me graduating and about to enter into an industry that was like predominantly white dominated, right? It was white dominated, not just with the stories that I saw, but the people that were making it. And I was so scared because I had just spent, 4 years dealing with micro and macro aggressions, not only me, but the other like BIPOC students in my class. And I really felt like I was unprepared to be a storyteller in the world. So the whole reason I started writing Dragon Lady was really just to reclaim some sense of artistic control, artistic voice. And I'm so glad that I did, because it really became the first step on the path that would lead me to where I am today, which is like multi-hyphenate cultural worker. You know, the work that I do lives in like theater and storytelling, but I also work in local governance back in Seattle, working with the Office of Arts and Culture, the Mayor's Office, the Office of Civil Rights and Culture, to really highlight the stories of the people who work for the city, to give their voices a platform on which to stand. Because when we think about the wellness of a city and the people responsible for it, often those people's stories and their experiences are silenced and or invisibilized.
Oh my bad.
Yeah, so I would say like emotionally, working on this play is the gift that keeps giving. It's hard because it means I constantly have to like interrogate like why I'm doing what I'm doing and the impact that it's having on the people around me. Like sometimes I look at people who don't think about other people and I'm like, wow, you just be in your own world. That must be so mentally easy for you. Like sometimes I'm like, am I jealous of that? I'm like, no, actually, that's just a different, it's a different vibe. I feel lucky to be tapped in and connected to my community and myself at an emotional level.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's nice to hear you discuss how you developed this when you were in college, just about to graduate, because that's the position that I recently have been in, and trying to navigate that and understanding what is it going to take for me to create and believe in myself. And honestly, like just doing it is how I've been taking on right now, because you never know. And so that, like, hearing your story is even more inspiring, because it's affirming to know, like, this wasn't planned. You were just creating through your emotional outlet, and now it's here. That's big.
And my emotional intuition. I think a lot of people forget that a person's intuition is like a muscle. In order for it to become stronger, you got to work it. You got to actually stress it out. You got to stress it in a way that is like controlled and consistent and that you can sustain. But if you do that, discipline over time builds a practice, and a practice can become an ideology, and an ideology can like lead you ultimately to where you need to be in your life, to the people that you need to see.
I love that.
And
Spoken like a true Pisces.
Definitely. It's Pisces season, baby.
You feel me?
Swimming in emotions.
So one thing you mentioned, I didn't realize that you were from Seattle. I actually visited Seattle for the first time back in October. And my experience was everywhere I went, no matter where I was at in the city, I could count on one hand how many people like me were around me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was an interesting experience, because I'm thinking, oh, Seattle was going to, it's bigger than Pittsburgh. It's going to be like me going to a bigger city. You know what I'm saying? But it was just like, whoa, I'm not fully comfortable here. So it's dope to hear that you do the community work that you do in Seattle. And that brings me to my next question, which is, what's it like navigating and dismantling white supremacy modalities in your work?
Like I'm 34, I'm about to be 35. And I'm thinking about what I used to think about this answer and this question when I was 24. When I was 24, it was all about, like, for me, I was like, everything I do must be in service of dismantling white supremacy.
But your existence is that.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. And that I was like working so hard. And what I didn't realize at the time is I was working so hard consciously to dismantle, but unconsciously what I was pushing forward was the like, see me, I'm worth something. Like validate me. Like I know that I'm worth something, and in order for me to know that I'm worth something, I have to break you down. And I've realized now, to thank God, because that was so exhausting, that at 34 that it's like, actually, yeah, me just existing, me being in community with my people, right? That's probably the best thing that I can do to resist white supremacy. And when I took that energy and I turned it inwards, and when I say inwards, it wasn't about like, I wasn't exclusively doing everything to break down those systems. I wasn't trying to fight something every day. I realized how important rest and rejuvenation and how like tapping into the love and the resources that my community has had for such a long time that has been like resilient in the face of white supremacy for generations. I was like, oh, that's the energy that I need in my life. Because I believe that white supremacy hurts everybody. It hurts white people too.
Yeah.
Right? And it benefits different people differently. That's how the system keeps these things in place. Is it keeps us on our toes. We're never quite sure. We can break through financial barriers. We can move up the ladder, whatever, the trickle down effect. But like it affects everybody differently. And I think about my show, you know, and I think about depending on what city I'm at, what kind of theater I'm in, what my audience is. It took me a long time in Seattle to diversify my audiences, but I did it in about 5 years. It went from primarily older white folks who were patrons of the theater to then being younger Black and brown queer folks who were coming out to see my work because they knew and they had heard that my story was their story. So then coming back to cities, coming to cities like Pittsburgh where nobody knows me. I'm at like one of the biggest theater houses in town. I'm looking in the audience and I'm seeing like older white folks. Me 24 years ago would have been like, I failed. Now I'm looking at them and I'm like, wow, those white folks sure are lucky to be here to see my story.
Okay.
They're privileged and blessed to be able to experience my perspective and my family's perspective. And it's actually not my responsibility to make sure they understand or see me because I exist regardless of them. My family exists regardless of them.
Hold on, we gotta get some hand claps.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautifully spoken.
Yeah, thank you. And I think like, you know, what you don't see because it's only me on stage, my family's very mixed. My family is Black, Filipino, white. Like my grandma, Ronald Porkalob's a white man. My mother, Maria, she's gay. And my other mother, Tina's Black. And so the qualities across like racial identifiers that I have in my family have directly like impacted how I see the world. And it's something that I carry with me that sometimes I don't know that I take for granted, but like I forget that other people look at me and they don't see all of that, right? Right? And then I'm like, oh, of course, they don't see this. They're projecting onto me who they think I am, just like I'm doing to them. Like honestly, like I'm projecting onto them what I think about them. And so what I have to remember when I think about like white supremacy in action is it's like me just existing is a form of resistance. Me taking that energy that I used to expend so readily to try to make white folks and white systems and white institutions see me is better invested in my own communities. And that when there are moments of cross collaboration or that when I have the decision to say, is the door open to white folks to come and see this play? Yes, you can come in and you can sit here and you can be blessed by this. You don't have to be here in order for it to be valuable. That's my perspective.
She answered my question.
That's beautiful. See, this is how you know we're sitting with a good speaker. You know what I'm saying? And it's so beautiful to hear your perspective when it comes to like dismantling white supremacy culture, because I'm still kind of developing what my ideology and practice is. Because one thing I came across, I've read a lot of the Tao Te Ching, and one of the principles in the Tao Te Ching is that those who aspire to be righteous are not righteous. And that righteousness is like, those who are truly righteous, they don't always want to be, because you have to act from a place of genuine care for other human beings. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's like you're acting in ways that piss me off, but I still care about you. And what does that look like? How do I act from a place of love, even though what you're doing is pissing me off and potentially causing harm to not only myself, but you and the community around you? You know what I'm saying? And how do you maintain that sense of grace, you know, and like, how do you lead with your heart? And I loved when you said how like you just being yourself is resistance. Because when these white folks come and see your story, you just being you is representing anyone who's like you out in the world and opening a door and opening a window into their perspective. Because when I was watching Dragon Lady, one thing that really stuck out to me was like, I forget that gangsters don't just exist in America. You know what I'm saying? Because I come from a pretty gangster family. And I grew up in a neighborhood here called Homewood, which is like one of the most gangster neighborhoods in the city. And to be able to see what you came from in your lineage and the gangster influences on how you got to America and how that shaped you and your family story is just like, wow, like even though we're from different cultures, it's like I'm seeing a mirror from a completely different perspective.
And that's what I think, that's what I know. Storytelling from like our autobiographical lives, from a place of like, from a place of curiosity and a place that is like able to know when we're judging someone or something so hard that it moves us farther away from something we can learn about ourselves or each other. Like doing that is the gift that keeps on giving, because you're sitting across from me with your wildly specific life story. I'm sitting here, you're sitting there, and we can trust actually that like our differences are the things that actually connect us together. When we can look at each other and be like, wow, I celebrate your differences because they're different from mine. I celebrate yours because they're different from mine. And I can actually learn something. And even if I could never understand your wildly specific life, I can value it. And I can show you that I value it through my actions, through my words. And it's like when we're able to value another person's life as being valuable to us just because, not because of what you give me, not because of how you make me feel, right? That's when that's when collectively, socially, things can start to change. Yes. And that's why I be looking at white people being like, don't you know it's also in your best interest to dismantle white supremacy? Don't you know the emotional healing that you and your ancestors have to do? You're over there being like, well, I'm so sad because I don't have any culture. Baby, you got culture.
You feel me?
You got culture. Your culture, you think it's been oppressing everybody else because, yes, historically, that's what you've been taught. You've been taught that you're the winner, that you sit at the top, but you are lonely up there. So when are you going to reckon with, like, the emotional damage, right, that, like, you're carrying with yourself genetically so that we can all stand next to each other in our differences, right the wrongs of the past, invest in reparations because they're good for everyone. You know?
I'm tired.
Yes.
I'm tired of you coming up to me with your white guilt.
Yes.
When you know it would just benefit if we just all have reparations. Like
Truly.
you probably wouldn't have as much guilt if we actually invested into communities in the way that that empower them.
Yeah. And I'm also like, you know what? It's okay for you to have your white guilt. Go talk to your white friends about that.
Okay, because
you know, like as your friend, like I love you. Don't get me wrong. But that kind of labor right there, I'm not so interested in handling that every coffee break and every lunch date we have together. So go talk to your white friends about that. I'm here when you want to take the next step. I'm ready. I'm ready for that part of that labor.
Yeah,
I
facts.
love that. No, I do. And then, so I really enjoy how storytelling gets to bring people together. And that brings me to what inspired you to share your personal story, and how did you know it was worth sharing?
The thing that inspired me is because I didn't see it anywhere. I didn't see it anywhere. I mean, admittedly, you know, at 21, like, also I was of the generation where, like, I grew up with a computer in my house, but I wasn't on the computer all the time.
Yeah.
So then, like, when I got into college, I was, like, in the library. And, of course, in the library, you got all these books written by, like, old white people, right? Or you're reading the books that are, like, largely about black and white racial dynamics of a time where the plays were written largely for, like, the trauma experience of black Americans. Or you're reading the plays about, like, the Asian or Latino or Latinx communities as being only immigrants who had to, like, struggle.
Right.
And I'm like, where are the stories where we just get to be like cool and sexy and fun?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I was like, okay, I don't want to wait for anybody else to write my family story. So I'm gonna just do it myself. So that was why I started. And then what gave me the like confidence or like the belief, honestly, it's my family. Like I can count on one hand the times anybody in my family ever said anything disparaging to me, ever. And the 3 times that happened, twice was from my mother. She apologized both times. One was when she was like, you should be a pharmacist when I'm applying, you know, to go to like theater colleges. I'm like, Mommy, why? She's like, well, because it's great benefits. And if the acting thing doesn't work out, you can always like be a pharmacist. I'm like, Mommy, I'm gonna be a doctor on TV one day and pay for your retirement. And she was like, okay, yeah, do what you want. You know what I'm saying? And my other mom, Tina, she like took me out to see theater since I was like 5 years old. And we would have family movie nights where she would like talk. I'd be like 8 and she'd be talking to me about the choreographic like detail of West Side Story and the race dynamics and the like gang relations. I'm 8 years old being like, huh? But now at 35, I look back on how my parents raised me and I go, oh, I was raised by two queer, strong, Black and Asian women, right? To be like, believe in yourself, because you're going to walk out into the real world and the world's going to try to beat you down, right? Or they're going to lift you up for their own purposes. At the end of the day, Sarah, can you lift yourself up? And I didn't realize what a privilege it was to grow up with a family like that. Because, you know, we grew up poor too, right? My parents are dealing with their own stuff, family dynamics, everything. I didn't realize until I was in college, and I was like, oh, my parents weren't shitty to me. Like, oh, my parents didn't traumatize or emotionally neglect or physically abuse me, you know? I was like, I grew up with a wealth of love. And that's why I'm able to get into these stories the way that I can get into them. Because I was taught, I'm going to get emotional, by like a beautiful family to love myself. And I've been able to extend that love, you know, to other people, my family, the community, and I just see how it gives back. And it's like this this beautiful cycle, you know. It's a mindset, abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset.
I can feel that in your writing, because one of the things that I really enjoyed about Dragon Lady is, although you're getting really deep into some like family topics that could be traumatic for many others, the way in which you write them, they have like this comedic relief almost to them, but it's not in a way that is poking fun at your family. It's very like you're embracing who they are, like authentically, and getting to showcase them in different lights, where I feel like in Western media, how people are typically portrayed in that type of context, it'd be like of course they do this, or making it seem almost like bad.
Yeah. Like
and it's
caricatures or
yes,
stereotypes.
and it's like you're embracing your family in all their capacity and for all the ways that they show up. And it's not, you're not simply like just dismissing their stories or saying like, oh, they're shitty people. No, like you're like, these are people with personal lives, with personal things that they go through, and like here's the reasons that they did them. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be a reason that the audience needs to know. And I love that. I love that you wrote it that way, because I don't even want to say it like this. So for anyone listening, please, this is the only word I can think of, but it made it digestible to your audience. But it's like, I don't even want it to be digestible. Like it made it so that everyone seeing it can get something out of your story, because it was your story, and it was very evident that it was your story. And you could have wrote it in so many different ways, but you chose to highlight that love around your family. And I loved that part the most.
Thank you. I truly believe one of the greatest things that you can do for somebody, like to show them that you love them, is to show them that you see them in all their capacity, good, bad, ugly, hard, but that you see them.
Yes.
And you don't need them to change.
Yeah. And you did such a beautiful job portraying the good, bad, and ugly of every person in Dragon Lady.
Thank
while
you.
playing every person in Dragon Lady.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And we got to see such a dynamic array of characters being played by just one person. And like seeing that and seeing the way that you portrayed it showed me that as a person, your empathy must be like on another level.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So
So
like,
like, is that something you had to develop, or is that something that like you always kind of had as like a part of your character?
I think it was something I always had, like growing up as an only child, you know, like my mama had me young, and I grew up in a house where she was raising her siblings too, you know, my grandma. So already I saw my mom being a caretaker for everybody else. And I think a lot of only children, especially if they grow up in a house full of like other people older than them, we become observant just by nature of our positioning, right? And then I think also because I was raised by like a Pisces mom and a Cancer mom, that's got to be part of it.
Yeah.
Being a Pisces myself, oh my God. But I also believe that like true like storytelling, like what are we actually trying to do when we tell a story? is we are trying to make a connection. And many people think that connections can be made only one way or only with these kinds of people. And I firmly reject that ideology. I think that there are many ways to tell a story. No one way is better than the other. And that in fact, if we believe that there are many ways to tell a story and that there are many stories out there, how many more connections can we make?
Okay.
That's just math, right? It's just math.
Yeah.
Why would I want to try to tell the perfect story to make what a perfect connection? Then what? What do I do? What? That's dumb from a mathematical standpoint, in my opinion. I'm like, then what am I actually trying to do? I'm trying to make connections. I'm trying to tell the truth, and I'm trying to like illuminate what people couldn't see before. And I have found that by doing this story, you know, building the Dragon Cycle, the trilogy of plays about my family, I have really challenged my muscle of empathy. Not only being able to like see multiple sides of an issue or a story from other people, like put myself in other people's shoes, but I am able to directly allow that to change how I see things. Because empathy is multifaceted. I think a lot of people are like, empathy is just like feeling the emotions of another person. I'm like, baby, that's like a drop in the bucket of empathy. Empathy is a muscle, you know? Like anything else, it has to be worked. And if you work it well with discipline, it gives back to you too. And you know, like what I mentioned, like how I felt when I was 24 about that earlier question about white supremacy, like how I felt when I was 24 about theater at large, the world at large. I feel very differently now at 34, but I know exactly how I got to where I'm feeling because every step of the way I was like, why do I feel this way? Why do those people feel this way? What is this actually doing to us?
Yeah.
And I realized how much of it is agency. Like, you know, I think a lot of people want to sit around a table and try to dissect something until it's true for everybody. And I don't know that that's a good use of energy versus being like, that part is true for you, that part's true for you, this part is true for me. And the tension that we're feeling lies
It's real
in,
for everyone.
it's real for everybody. So are we going to collectively agree to move through this together and be okay not resolving what we think is the issue? Or choose something new.
Wait. I had to sit on that one for a second. Because I feel like that is hard.
It's so hard. Like having to adjust your expectations or like in a relationship with somebody, be like, oh, I could be investing so much energy right now in trying to get you to change for me. Gosh, what can I actually change about myself? And do I even want to engage in this labor? Ooh. And sometimes by saying, no, I don't want to engage in the labor, a lot of people think like, then that means you don't really love or care about that person.
No, I love
it's
to
like,
care about them
yes,
and myself
and
enough.
myself and myself.
Okay.
And just like I'm making a choice for myself right now, and before I was making a choice for them, they're welcome to make a choice for them and or a choice for me.
Straight like that. Yeah, facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You've touched on so many things.
Oh, really?
Like so many things. Like at the beginning of our interview, you touched on what's called the balance of polarities, which is like this need to recognize that our differences don't have to clash, but they could be complementary, right?
Entirely.
Now you're talking about what's called free will. It's the energy of free will, which is like when I look at you, right? You're someone who can make their own decisions, just like I'm someone who can make my own decisions. And I could sit here and invest my time in thinking, oh, like, you know, what decisions do I want them to make on my behalf? Or I could honor your free will as a person and realize that no matter what you do, I can always choose how I react to that and how I respond to it. I just got to let it happen and let it be what it is and then respond to what is versus trying to come up with what I want things to be and reacting to that.
It's such a, yes, thank you for saying that. And that's like the hardest part actually of what I do.
Yeah, I feel it.
Because I like to have a plan, you know. I'm a big fan of like having a plan as a means to take care of people. Like I don't want anybody to ever come into my house or to come to my table and walk away feeling like their time was wasted. And that's like born out of like being an only child, seeing my mother who was a nurturer all her life, not learning how to establish her own boundaries. But I've realized now that has like, in the last couple of years, has grown into this tendency to control, to extrapolate, to predict. And my work that I'm moving into, this next chapter of my life that I mentioned before we started this interview, is the like, oh, actually it's trusting. It's trusting, being okay with not knowing, but knowing that moment to moment those are the opportunities in which actually the like humanity gets to show up. I'm not gonna like try to pressure you to become something that I want you to be or that I think you need to be. In fact, I'm just gonna look at what is and know that how I respond to what is in the moment, that's what builds the path. But it's scary. It's like, I believe so firmly in holding on tightly to like what I know and what I stand for. And in the same hand, letting go is like an act of love too, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Shit.
Because now I'm thinking, how did that translate into your career? Like
Girl.
the expectations of what you thought you wanted and like whether you got them, whether you didn't get them. How did you handle that?
I'd say the biggest, most recent example of that is I had my Broadway debut in 2022. And I was in this show called 1776, this revival. And we all played founding fathers. It was about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, the entire cast was all like non-binary, femme identifying people, lots of POC folks, some white folks, and I was playing a founding father from the South. And I did this interview with Vulture Magazine, who the writer was very familiar with my work as like an activist, director, somebody who wasn't just an actor. And they asked me a lot of questions, my opinions about Broadway, and I just kept it really real. And that interview went viral, and it really made a lot of the Broadway community upset, and it made a lot of my internal team upset. There were a handful of things I said in that interview that I could have said differently that were disrespectful to the creative process. And I look back on that now and I'm like, yeah, I could have said that differently, and I will say those things differently in the future. And the thing that really surprised me though is that I was engaging with the work in a way that I always have, critically, empathetically, with like with an eye towards the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I said stuff in that interview like, to me, Broadway's just a job. And I'm showing up doing 75% because I need the 25% of my life to be for me, my partner, my other projects. And unfortunately, no, this project isn't creatively fulfilling for me. It is just a job. And a lot of people didn't want to hear that.
Wow.
And as a result, I had some big institutional relationships that ended as a result of that. Folks who no longer wanted to work with me or be in collaboration with me. For a while there, I felt a little bit blacklisted, like I wasn't going to be seen for interview or auditions. And I was startled because I thought, oh, this Broadway New York venture is going to be the next chapter of my life. And now I'm like, half of the city hates me, and half of them are like, thank you for your representation. And I'm looking back now, and I know now, oh, that was all meant to happen that way.
Yeah.
That wasn't the closing of a chapter, Sarah. It wasn't even a block in the road, even though at the time it felt like it because you felt so isolated. It was actually entirely aligned with everything you've ever done, everything you've ever been. And this is your moment to not harden in the face of the industry, but to soften and to have empathy for yourself, learn from your mistakes, apologize where you can, save the relationships where you can, and continue moving forward with some peace about the things you can't change.
Yes.
So that was like the most clear example where like a lot of people were like, she's never gonna work here again and she needs to be fired. And here I am doing my own work, meeting amazing people.
They said they ain't stopping her bag. Okay.
Yeah.
There are greater things.
Yeah. So that's how I feel. Feels aligned. I feel very aligned. I feel very grounded.
I love that though. And that's inspiring to know because we were talking about the Capricorn energy. I feel like your Capricorn probably showed out in that interview.
I mean, you can Google it and you can be like, damn. Really Capricorn.
But like, so this is why community connections are important, because previously I would have never known like, oh, I could see myself in someone that doesn't look like me. Like oftentimes I think we get so caught up in either labels or identifying markers, and although those things can be important in order to get resources out to those in need and in those groups, much of what you shared, I very much see myself. Like the fact that you work in advocacy, that's exactly what I work in at the moment. in media and exploring your artistry, your creative process. So one, to even just sit here and get to have this conversation with you is very insightful, and providing so much clarity to me. And that is like storytelling in action right now.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many things that I feel like I could ask right now that I'm not even going to get into. But like, knowing that you still advocate within your roles now, while you're also pursuing art, is definitely a choice. And shows that you're passionate about what you do. And so, I'm grateful for you being honest, whether that was, I feel like you own up to it now, but that's inspiring. And I really just want to say that's inspiring. We don't have to discuss it now, but I would love to hear more about like your advocacy work for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So I know you're on a little bit of a time crunch.
I know. This is so much fun.
We could go, man, like, I would love for this interview to go the distance. But for the sake of time, we're going to close on this one question, which is, what would you tell the people, in your opinion, as to why they should come and see Dragon Lady?
I can guarantee that nobody has ever seen anything like this before.
Stamped.
That they will be appalled, enamored, entertained, moved, and inspired after the show to look at their own lives and their families with new curiosity, maybe even some new like hunger and drive to examine where they came from, the people that made them who they are today, and maybe even be inspired to reach out to family that they haven't talked to in a long time. And when I say family, I don't just mean blood family, I mean chosen family, friends, people who've had the impact, on our lives day to day, years ago, that those important people. That's why people should come see the show. Like, here's the facts. A lot of theater isn't very entertaining. And I think that a lot of theater isn't accessible the way that like film and TV and movies and music are. Theater, I think, is one of the most inaccessible art forms, which I struggle with every day, being a theater maker, being like, God, how do we get this out to people? Because I believe live storytelling is so crucial. So I can guarantee that when y'all come to see my show, you're going to leave being like, oh, shit, I have stories to tell.
That's exactly how I felt. I'm not even going to lie.
Yay.
Like, that's exactly how I felt. That was the first thing that popped into my mind. I was like, wow, I can talk about this?
Yes.
Like, I was like, I could talk about this. I can say these things.
Yes.
I can get funded and backed for projects. I can get booked here. Like, that, yeah.
Yes. That we all have lives that we're living. And they're worth something because we're living.
You feel me?
Literally.
Yes.
Like, literally.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I want, And it's just so funny to me that it's like a solo show. I never intended it for it to be. But I tell you what, I also can't wait for the day that it's adapted for television and I can give so many people jobs. Like, I cannot, I'm hungry and I'm ready to be like that kind of producer. I mean, I've always been in my back pocket, but I'm really hungry now to like have a team of folks, have a community that's like wide and deep. And that's what I want people to leave my show with. They come in with either no expectations or even some doubts because it's a one-woman musical show, and they leave going, oh my God, what am I capable of as one person?
Yes.
Because they just watch me do something that they've never seen before.
No.
And could you let us know how many more dates we have Dragon Lady in the city for, and where they could go to see Dragon Lady?
Yep. So you can find information about the show at ppt.org/Dragon Lady, or if you just type in Dragon Lady Pittsburgh Public Theater, it'll show up in the top choice.
Okay.
I'm gonna be here till February 25th, which is only through this Sunday, but we have shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday.
Okay.
So y'all should come through. If anybody has any issues with the ticket price, they can find me on Instagram at Porkalob. DM me and I can help them. I don't want ticket
Okay.
price to be a barrier, especially if they're like younger folks, right? Or folks who don't get to come to the theater often. But if they miss it, they can also live stream it, the last 4 performances. But I also have a feeling that I might be back here in Pittsburgh doing one of the other plays.
Let's get it.
And they can also follow me on my website, saraporkalob.com, ask to be on my email list. I'm going to be bringing these plays all over the country and hopefully to TV soon one day too. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, I have a question because I know it was our last question, but I feel like this really wraps it up.
Okay. All right.
We had to ask her the question about it being the dragon year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but you had a really good question. Would you like to ask it?
Ooh. Yes. So my question was, what is the significance of the dragon to you and your family?
Yeah. Mythically, there are dragons in cultural myths all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are like such a symbol for not only like power, but also like rebirth, this like life cycle, life, birth, and death. In Chinese astrology, the dragon is like the symbol of like good luck, vitality, money, and abundance. I chose Dragon Lady as the title of my play because once upon a time, Dragon Lady used to be an Asian slur. Like if you were to look at like stereotypes of like Asian women in media, you could find 2 stereotypes. One of them being the Madam Butterfly stereotype, which is very submissive, quiet, willing to like sacrifice anything for her family or for children. Madame Butterfly is a character from Puccini's opera who literally kills herself so that her child, who is half white and half Asian, can go live with his white father and have a better life. So the martyr. Then you have the Dragon Lady, the other end, the polarity, right? This binary system where she's like evil and cunning and vicious and very sexual. And I looked at those stereotypes when I was in college and I was like, well, shit, if I have to choose one of them, I'm going to choose the badass one. Why would I want to be a martyr?
Straight like that.
Straight like that. And then I was like, you know what, though? I'm going to reclaim this stereotype. I'm going to reclaim this slur, and I'm going to body it with the women of my family who are wildly complex, beautiful, sexy, violent, complicated, difficult women. And I'm going to reclaim that for myself. And it has become, in some ways, like my family's legacy and dynasty, which is pretty fucking cool.
And that's why you should go watch it.
That's why you should go watch it.
Oh my
It's also the year of the
goodness.
dragon. So for anybody listening, karmically, this is going to be a big year for everybody. If you accept like your flaws, the things that you want to work on, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, you know what, I might not be happy with like who I am right now, but I'm going to be okay with that. You give yourself that forgiveness. You give yourself that acceptance. You extend that kind of love to yourself. This year of the dragon, that shit's going to reflect back at you over and over. But you have to be brave enough to look at yourself in the mirror. So that's just like my little karmic gift to everybody who's listening.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. Yes, this has been an amazing interview. Thank you for tuning in to Vibe Check, the very first episode of Vibe
Oh my
Check.
God, I'm so honored.
Yes, right. And we're honored to have you. So,
Yes.
yeah, you can follow me on social media at Treble NLS.
You can follow me on social media at Ajani Zanaya
And
or
we might,
Aji Spitz.
you feel me? And we might make a page for this. Who knows? We're still figuring it out. But stay tuned. We got more coming for you.
Adios.